If you're buying a home anywhere in the Dayton area right now, there's a question you need to ask before signing, and almost nobody was asking this question 2 years ago. Before you ask about the schools or the roof, ask this. Is there a data center coming nearby? Because the biggest force reshaping Miami Valley home values right now is data centers and the power lines that feed them. Amazon alone has nearly $12 billion committed to data centers within 40 minutes of here. Trenton residents were just in the news because they didn't find out that land was sold in Trenton for a data center until after the deal was done. I've been following all of these developments, so I'm going to tell you exactly what's happening, how it affects your home values, and what you can do about it. Let's get into it. Ohio has become one of the biggest data center states in America. We are home to 194 of them, 6th in the country. And counting proposals, there are now more than 200 data centers statewide, with no central database anywhere that tracks them. Nobody is keeping a master list. Remember that because it will matter later. So here's what the newest wave looks like locally. In Trenton, project is already underway for Amazon. Nearly 1 million square feet on 141 acres. And Amazon is negotiating a second $5 billion project on another 600 acres. Sidney has Amazon's $3 billion Project Galaxy. Wilmington has proposed a $4 billion Amazon campus. There are also proposals in Piqua, Wilmington, Preble County, and Hamilton. That's 3 Amazon projects within 40 minutes of each other. This is happening to us and not somewhere else. And the state just blinked. Data centers with tax breaks were about $27 billion last year, but the sales tax exemptions they got was about $1.6 billion, 10 times what was projected. So Governor DeWine froze new data center tax exemptions, at least until he's out of office. There are even 2 bills in legislation right now that would end the tax exemptions altogether. When the state that recruited these projects starts pumping the brakes, that tells you something. So here's why all of this matters to you, not as an investor, but by somebody who wants to live here. Let's start with the impact most people never see coming because it doesn't happen at the data center, it happens miles away, on land that has nothing to do with the project. A data center needs an enormous, constant supply of electricity. So the utility has to build new lines to support it, and those lines have to cross someone's property. Right now, a business group called the Ohio Business Roundtable wants to change Ohio's eminent domain law to allow something called deposit and build, which means a utility could start construction on your land before they settle how much they have to pay you for it. The Ohio Farm Bureau is fighting that hard. And this isn't hypothetical. Up near Bowling Green, a family refused to sell their land that's been in their family for generations for a natural gas pipeline that's feeding a Meta data center. The developer moved towards eminent domain anyway. The family lawyered up, bought it at the state sitting board, and the pipeline got rerouted around their farm. But only after a fight most people never see coming until it's in your mailbox. Now, to be fair, there's a real protection here. Ohio's Supreme Court has already ruled that private property can't be taken purely to hand it to another private company just for economic development. That's a legal ceiling that a lot of states don't have. But deposit and build would chip away at the edges of it, and it's being discussed right now. So the lesson is not panic. The lesson is that if you're trying to build on acreage anywhere near a transmission corridor, the easement maps are public, and that's homework, not a footnote. The next one, you don't need a data center next door to feel because it's already here. If you're an AES Ohio customer, your bill has been creeping up, and you're not imagining it. But let me be straight with you, because the chatter online kind of gets it wrong. Data centers did not cause the increase that you've already paid. What is data center driven is the regional piece. Dayton sits inside PJM, a massive multi-state power market, and PJM's wholesale capacity rates jumped 830% between the 2024-25 to the 2025-26 delivery years, and another 22% for the 2027. Data center demand around PJM footprint is a big driver for that price hike. AES Ohio itself didn't generate the power, they just deliver it. So their piece of your bill is smaller than what the headlines suggest. Under the rate plan working through state regulators right now, a typical household will see a rate increase of about 30 cents per month in 2027, about $3 in 2028, and about $2 in 2029. Real money, but not a shock. And here's the part I actually like. That same case creates a separate rate class just for data centers, and requires them to pay for the transmission upgrades for their own project need. Regulators are trying to keep the data centers off your bill. Whether that holds after 2029, as more of these projects plug in, is the thing to watch. Because your long-term cost of living here is partly riding on that fight. And then there's water, and water is a big part of this city. Data centers use an enormous amount of water for cooling. And in the Miami Valley, that question hits differently, because much of our region sits upon the Great Miami Buried Valley Aquifer, one of the most productive underground water sources in our country for drinking water. Dayton banned data centers outright this year through a zoning change. City Commissioner Daryl Fairchild put it plainly: "We want to be ahead of anyone approaching us. Right now, we don't see a justification for a data center." For scale, Trenton's water plant can produce about 6 million gallons of water a day, and the city currently uses about 1.5 million. But if you're buying on a well or on a small community water system, a giant industrial new water user nearby is something to understand before you commit, because nobody is running that math for you. So here's why a home that looks totally fine today can change in a year. The rules are being rewritten right now, and they change at every city line. Same state, same technology, completely different answers. Let me walk you through it, because this is the part that I watch closest. Dayton banned data centers citywide. Full stop. Urbana passed its own restrictive ordinance, and a developer turned around and sued the city for it. That case is still in court. Wilmington might be the most expensive lesson in the region. Amazon proposed a $4 million campus on about 471 acres off of US 68. 10 families led by Jessica Sharp, who lives about 200 feet from the site, sued the city, saying the zoning was passed without proper notice to the public. In her words, it was all done pretty much in the shadows. After 3 days in federal court, a judge agreed and ordered Wilmington to redo the zoning, the data center rules, and even the generator noise ordinance, all with proper notice this time. Those families have all spent about $47,000 of their own money on legal fees. The residents are paying real money just to make sure the city follows the rules. Then there's Trenton, and this one is in the news this week. The city agreed to sell the land to Prologis in spring of 2024. The sale closed in fall of 2025, and most residents found out after that. And a city official has signed a non-disclosure agreement along the way. When it finally came out, the November council meeting ran over 4 hours. A resident group called Water formed, and they've been filing public records requests since January. The mayor has admitted there was communication issues. The city's argument is competition, that announcing these deals early scares projects off to the next town. Residents told reporters nobody has faith in their local government right now. And there's another 600-acre annexation in process for the next Amazon project right now. Trenton isn't fighting to stop it. They're negotiating for transparency and a development agreement so that the residents and the schools don't fit the bill. Hamilton hit pause after one project asked for 200 megawatts of power in a city with about 27,000 homes total. Sidney's project is already running, and Piqua went the other way entirely and welcomed a data center campus alongside a $12 million renovation that's bringing 200 jobs downtown. Nobody's suing anybody in Piqua. So look at that list again. Ban, lawsuit, court-ordered redo, an NDA deal residents had no idea about, pause. Welcome, Matt. Your county line tells you about nothing, which is why I'll say it about as plainly as I can. The zoning map is the single most important thing anybody needs to look at before they buy. A quiet parcel zoned agricultural today can be industrial by next spring. And if there's no notification requirement with teeth, you will find out when the bulldozers show up. Does living near a data center affect what your house is worth? 2 national studies say no, but the families inside of a quarter mile will tell you a different story. Here's what the studies actually show. A 2025 George Mason University study of Northern Virginia, the biggest data center market in our country, found homes closer to data centers sold for more on average. But the researchers say that's because data centers get built where the infrastructure already exists. As one of them put it, the data center did not create the desirability, they built it where it already was. And Realtor.com compared 43 zip codes that got a big data center against zip codes that didn't. 2 years after opening, prices tracked pretty much exactly the same. No meaningful gain, no meaningful loss. But that same Realtor.com study found something that a lot of people skipped past. 3 years after the data center opens, those communities were holding on to about 60% of their for sale listings versus 43% in matched towns. Homes near data centers sit on the market longer, and the new ones are increasingly being built in lower income areas, the places with fewer lawyers and less pushback. Their words, not mine. The data centers are coming to them. Now zoom into the fence line, because average hides what happens there. If one house takes an 18% hit and you average that across hundreds of unaffected homes a mile out, the damage disappears from the data, but it does not disappear from that house. One 2026 comparison of Northern Virginia found that a 4-bedroom home about 200 feet from a data center listed at about $580,000, while comparable homes away from it were listed about $680,000. At 1.1 miles away from the facility, the effect was basically zero. Industrial news studies generally put the effect at about 3 to 10%, depending on the distance. And appraisers do apply nuisance adjustments exactly for this. My honest take as an agent, inside that quarter-mile ring, resale gets hard. Your buyer pool shrinks, and appreciation can flatline. Distance is the whole game. And the day-to-day is real. One Michigan homeowner next to a data center measured his nighttime averages, going from a baseline of 52 decibels to a steady 61 and spiking to 78. A Virginia family moved their newborn's crib to the basement because of the vibration. Those are extremes, not the norm. But in Trenton, the market so far backs up the studies. The median list price is about $280,000, and agents say there's no single buyer that walked away because of the data centers. The damage so far in Trenton is trust, not price. Here's the part that should bother you though. A data center nearby is generally a material defect that the seller should disclose. Should. Not always does. So that's on you to verify. I'll show you in a minute. The argument that brings data centers to the area is always jobs. Here's the math nobody puts on the billboard. One recent Ohio data center project got about a $4.5 million tax break, and it promised 10 permanent jobs. 10. Ball State economist Michael Hicks found the employment effect of a typical data center is about 10% of what one Walmart supercenter adds to the area. Research from the Ham Institute shows big hyperscale campuses typically run with about 20 to 30 jobs. And the Ohio River Valley Institute looked at local host committees and found little to no growth in jobs, employment, or area income. To be fair, the Trenton facility does say it will employ about 100 to 150 people, and the construction is real money. An electrical workers union covering Butler and Warren counties puts the build out at roughly $2 million in wages, but construction ends. So when the next $5 billion headline drops, ask the only question that matters. $5 billion of what? And who gets the paychecks? So let's make this practical. If you're buying anywhere in the region, especially outside a dense suburb, here are the 5 things I would check before you sign anything, and none of them are on a standard inspection report. 1. Pull the zoning, current and proposed. Don't just ask what it's zoned now. Ask the township or county planning office what is pending nearby. Rezoning request, annexations, special use permits. The big projects show up in those filings first, and you watched what happens to towns when nobody's looking. 2. Ask about moratoriums and new ordinances, and when they expire. Dayton, Urbana, Wilmington, Hamilton, and Trenton are all headed in different directions as we speak. 3. Look up planned transmission lines and utility easements. Even miles from a data center site, that's where the eminent domain risk really lives. 4. Drive the area at night. Data centers run 24/7. Listen to the hum, look for the lighting. A street that's peaceful at 2 p.m. might be a nightmare in the middle of the night. And 5. Read the seller's disclosure very carefully. Ask them in writing if they know of any planned data centers coming nearby. Should disclose and did are 2 separate things. Ohio is a buyer beware state, so technically this sits on you. And remember what I told you from the start. There's no central list of these projects anywhere. The state isn't keeping one. And that's why working with an agent who's tracking these things is more important than ever. Now, none of this is me telling you don't buy here. The Dayton region is still one of the most affordable places to own a home in America. And honestly, this investment wave is part of the reason the economy is heating up. But every one of these projects gets sold as free money, and somebody has to pay. In a power bill, a quiet street, or the tax bills covering what the data center doesn't. 10 extra minutes of homework decides if that person is you. If you're buying or selling anywhere in the Miami Valley and you want someone who's actually watching this stuff, reach out anytime. The link is below. And if this helped, hit subscribe, hit like, share it to somebody that you think might need to know this.